Good morning, everyone. My name is Vincenzo Berghella. Once again, welcome to AJOG MFM Live. Kavita, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Vince. I'm doing fantastic. I always look forward to having to start my Friday mornings with you like this, talking about love and happiness and just all beautiful things. So I'm doing great. Thank you
I'm
for having
so
me.
I'm so happy to be here. We've done a few of these. We'll talk about activities today. Should we start with a usual routine?
Yes, gratitude. We love that. And even again, I always invite all our listeners. Thank you for being here. And the fact that you chose to be here with us, that means you are invested in your own happiness, your own joy as well. So join us and think about something you are grateful for while we share our gratitude. Vince, do you want to take it away?
I think I'll share the fact that you and I have been to the SMFM, the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine leadership course recently, the first weekend in March. It's really an amazing opportunity. So for everyone, I guess it's smfm.org/leadership. You'll find the leadership course there. It's given every year in October and March.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Idalin Curry and is named after Dan O'Keefe, and Mike Foley is there and facilitates it too. It's an amazing course, and it really teaches you about life, how to relate to others, how to discover yourself, how to decide, for example, who to have on your bus and on
Oh,
your
yes.
team, both family wise and professionally. So it's really a great time and a wonderful time with you and the 30 or so that usually come
Yeah.
to that meeting. What about
Yeah.
you?
No, absolutely. Before I share mine, I wanted to do just piggyback on that. I just came back from the conference, as Vince said, absolutely phenomenal conference. And I think you learn so much. And the most beautiful thing that I think I get from there is the friendships that form, the network. People are sharing their stories, their ideas, and you learn so much just from everyone around you too. So, I really encourage anyone that's listening to consider that just for your own to add to your own repertoire of things that you can add to your skills. As for me, I will say I'm just so grateful that spring is around the corner. This morning I walked out of my house and I looked up, and for the first time the trees, I started seeing those little pink buds started to show up on,
That's great.
and I was just so, it just made my day. It made me so happy. And that made reminded me of something, because sometimes nature teaches us so much, like we go through seasons of life, right? There are seasons to grow, to hibernate. And I think winter is a season where you just kind of hibernate, but spring is not just a season to grow. This is the season to bloom, right? So I want all of you to capture that spring energy and use this to bloom whatever dreams you've had, whatever things you're working on. Go finally make it happen. Go, live large, shine your brightest and most beautiful colors this season.
That's great. That's great. And today it's a special day as well.
Yes, absolutely. Vince Ryan this morning. Thank you. So happy International Women's Day to all the incredible women out there. I think today is such an important day to acknowledge, celebrate, and recognize women from all walks of life. So wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, and even for the men that, are in the women's in your life, just celebrate every one of them. And while I was thinking about this, I actually looked back a little bit to see, hey, what was the origin of this? Like, where did this come from? And it's actually really amazing. This actually started, the first movement for Women's Day actually came about in 1848, actually, in the United States, when the indigenous women spoke up against anti-slavery. And that was the first movement that they said, hey, women have power. But it really became more official and recognized in the US as a national Women's Day in 1908, when women that were working in all the garment factories in New York actually striked and said the working conditions were awful, were terrible. They made a movement. And when a whole group of women came together, that power, and that said, no, we are going to stand our ground. That was the first day they were recognized as a National Women's Day. And then the United Nations finally adopted this and made it an International Women's Day to celebrate women around the globe, all women from children to adults. And that happened in 1977. So I'm here today, and I just want to thank all the women in the past who stepped up, who shared their voice, who gave the power to the women the privileges that we are able to have today as women. So thank you to everybody.
And thanks for me, for you, for celebrating that, and for me celebrating Women's Day. Lots of important women in my life. My mom, my wife, and I have a little daughter, and we have a lot of there are many books about so many important women in the world who have changed the world, who made the world a better place.
Mhm.
Well-known ones to each of you listening who are making the world a better place. With
Absolutely.
that, it's perfect kind of segue to go on today's topic. Again, activities that will increase happiness, and we'll go over hopefully quite a few, and some I think will surprise all of us. But this again, based on science and the evidence-based concepts we've been going through all the other previous 5 sessions. We actually covered a little bit. We were talking about love last time. We will talk about love for quite a while, maybe later on. We discussed the fact that it starts with learning who you are first, and also who the other person is and how they want to be loved. You shared the fact that the most important thing is to kind of invest first in yourself and be extraordinary so you can be loved and you
Mhm.
can attract love back. Finding your strengths, and we talked about this a lot. These are mine, but each of us have different strengths, and it's important to know your own strengths and other people's strengths. We talked about the love languages.
Mhm.
So important to be good at all of them, but also to know your top two, so that your partner can kind of know that
Yeah.
you may feel it more sometimes if you get gifts or if you get acts of service or if you get a nice word of affirmation, and each of us is a little bit different. And I think we left it last time, the next concept, which is a really, really important concept.
Yeah.
This book, Kavita, changed my mind.
Mm.
This attached book
Mhm.
here. I didn't know about the attachment styles till a few years ago. Um, so about 50% of us are secure in our attachment styles. 25% are anxious, 25% are avoidant, and 5% are less or fearful. Um, and I'll go over this in some details, and then we can discuss it. Some of us, and this goes up to the childhood roots of happiness, as well as to genetics.
Mhm.
Some of us were born somewhat secure in kind of having low anxiety,
Mhm.
low avoidance of people. We like to be extroverted and with other people, but in general we're secure. And this also comes from the fact that, like we discussed, our mother or father, caregiver
Mhm.
around us. If we cried, they were around. They actually understood, which is hard to do with two little kids. They cry. You have to figure out if it's their diapers, if they want to eat, or if they want to sleep. And we learned that, and we were secure. So I certainly, for example, I felt all my life my mom loved me so unconditionally that I was secure in my attachment styles, and I was open to have a relationship with somebody, hopefully with the same maturity. Some people instead, I don't know, some in my own family, somehow maybe they had some genetics predisposition, but also maybe their parent, they were not the favorite child.
Mhm.
Maybe their sister, their brother, they felt were the favorite, and they were not so favorite.
Mhm.
So because of that, or whatever other experiences, maybe they had some bad experience at the beginning of their love life. They were left, by their, significant other, and they grow anxious in their
Mhm.
attachment style. So they feel like, that person may not be there for me. Even if the person reassures them all the time, I love you, I love you, I love you,
Mhm.
I'm never going to leave you, and they've been together 40 years maybe,
Yeah.
they may have that anxious style of saying, they may leave me, just like my mother
Mhm.
did, or my father
Yep.
did, or my first two boyfriends did, or two girlfriends.
Mhm.
And the last common one, it's avoidant. It's actually goes back to the fact that, again, as a child, and maybe some genetic predisposition, you felt that your parents, your caregiver, was not there for you.
Mhm.
You cried and nobody came to rescue. Nobody gave you your pacifier. Nobody gave you milk. And then you grow so unhappy, so fearful, that you have eye avoidance,
Hmm.
and you kind of say, you know what, I'm not going to get hurt anymore.
Yeah.
I have so many bad relationships. I'm just going to give up. And I know a lot of people, boys and girls, who, even closer to my age, 40, 50, 60 plus, who may be single because they have decided, you know what, I'm not going to play with love, quote unquote, anymore. I'm going
Mhm.
to avoid it. And it's unfortunate when it's in a 20-year-old who may have had such bad relationships in their early life, or early life, that they avoid that. Those are the three most common
Mhm.
attachment styles. And it was so enlightening for me because, again, for example, if an anxious person dates an avoidant, you can imagine that that's not going to be very happy relation. The anxious one wants, love me, love me, love me, wants reassurance, and the avoidant goes, no, 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 don't touch me, don't be near me. I don't want to hear that. No love, no, and obviously, the easiest is to secure. A secure and anxious may do really, really well because, again, anxious actually wants to give lots of love.
Mhm.
They believe in love and want to be loved and want to be close, and that may be really nice for a secure person to have somebody who needs them. And surely there's some data that some of these attachment styles may change a little bit over time,
Mhm.
but most of the time, 90+% of us kind of, by the time we're teenagers, early 20s, we're set in the styles, and it's hard to change. Any comments on this from
Yeah,
you?
no, absolutely. I love that you brought this up because this is something that I've had to do a lot of work on for myself too, and I think this is so true. We all, first of all, a lot of people don't know about this concept, but once you do, I think it's important to go figure out where you land. And, as human beings, we're not just in one block. We're not just, oh, I'm just an anxious, I'm just avoidant, I'm just, we kind of fluctuate. It's kind of like, and depending on what is happening in your environment, if you are triggered, let's say of an anxious person, if someone you love is leaving, that's when you get triggered and you act out. That is the moment you pause and say, why am I behaving that way? And that's how you come to know what kind of style you are. But the good news is, everyone can work towards being more secure, because that really is the happiest and most, what do you call, the best way to really exist, because you are so grounded in who you are as yourself that you're not dependent on people around you. And I had to learn this myself. And I shared this, I think, with the last time when we talked about, when I was a little girl, my parents, out of love and wanting the best education for me, wanted to make sure I learned English, they sent me away to a boarding school when I was in first grade. I was like barely 6 years old, out in the middle of nowhere, the Himalayas, by myself. My sister, my friends were there. But that feeling that left me, I know my parents love me immensely, but every since then, even into my adulthood, when people would leave, or if I text and I say, "Hey, I love you," and I never got a text back, I'd get so triggered. I'd be like, "Oh, maybe they don't love me anymore. Maybe they don't want to be here." But it took some reflection to realize that all this stemmed from my past. All this stemmed from that belief that I was not lovable and people were going to leave me. And that made me realize I had anxious attachment style. And the moment you have awareness around something is when you can start doing the work to say, no, I'm going to reframe this so that you can move to a more secure attachment. It's very possible. And it takes a lot of work. So, like when you said just now that, when people find this out in their 20s and they say, no, I'm not going to play with love anymore. Actually, the right way to phrase that, for people, that's exactly how people look at it. I'm not going to face love anymore. The person you're not facing, it's not that you don't want to face love. You don't want to face yourself.
Yeah.
You don't want to. It's scary. It takes a lot of courage to go in and allow those feelings to bubble up and fully feel them and acknowledge them and say, this is why I feel this way. And trying to break that pattern means you're going to have to sit in those feelings a lot and retell yourself, nope, that person loves me. This is not true. What I'm feeling is because of the way I'm looking at it, is the way I'm wired to look at it. It's breaking, again, it goes back to the neuroplasticity, right? It's again unlearning what you've told yourself this whole time and relearning a new thing. But it is such important work Because the moment you're able to keep doing that for yourself and move into secure attachment, you will form healthier relationships. In life, your joy will be originating from within you. It doesn't matter, you're not dependent on someone texting you and I love you back. You'll be able to realize that, oh, that person must be busy. I All the other things they've done for me in the past, it's a thing with anxious attachment. They can do everything for you. You could have had a perfect day, and one text you don't get back, you spiral into like, oh, they don't love me anymore. It's so common, right? But that's only because when you recognize you can fix that by changing the way you look at things. I think it's so important. And you mentioned the anxious and avoidant couple. Did you know that's actually the most common couple duo that exists, is an anxious avoidant couple? And because the anxious partners usually attract avoidant partners, and avoidant partners, they're so scared to love. When you have someone that is just so giving, suddenly they're like, oh, I want that. But when conflict arise, that's when it becomes a problem. And a lot of couples that are in anxious avoidant relationships, they end up doing this dance, because once they're in conflict, when they're not in conflict, it's beautiful. But once you're in conflict, the anxious person is like, let's fix it. I need to talk this out right now. I need to, get things going. And the avoidant partner is like, oh
No,
no,
no, no.
yes, no, I need my space. We can't do emotions right now. And then the anxious person gets even more anxious. The avoidant person gets even more avoidant. So unless both people are able to recognize their own attachment styles and come to the middle and say, okay, I am feeling anxious right now. I need this from this person, but you know what? I got to recognize this is my anxiety. It allows you to step back. And the avoidant person might say, well, I'm pulling back so much. This is my avoidant personality. I need to do the work to take a step forward. So everyone, slowly over time, then you can meet each other. But unless you recognize what your patterns are, what your triggers are, how that's impacting your partner, and unless you take ownership and accountability for making that change yourself, you might continue to find yourself in this loop. So I feel like this whole concept of attachment, like I could talk all day about it, because I think it's so true. And it's if you do the work, you can break the cycle.
It changed my life, Kavita. Your words are so true. And again, for people listening, and there are, I think, maybe over 1,000 today. The take the test. Go to
Yeah.
attachment styles. Google it. Take the test, and it starts, like you say, by knowing yourself and where you land. And there's nothing good or bad. About these. The important thing, it starts with you, what you are, and then the plasticity of saying, okay, I could move more towards one or the other. Again, most people want to move towards secure, but they may have some avoidant parts of themselves, some anxious part, and the important things that they know, and especially the partner
Mm-hmm.
knows. For example, if you're an anxious partner, if and you love them, loving meaning, you want them to be happy the way they want to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
you reassure them all the time. You
Yeah.
text them all the time.
Yeah.
If you're on a business trip, you do FaceTime and you show them that you're not with anybody else and you love them and you're thinking of them. You bring back a gift. You're available. You make them less anxious. So
Absolutely.
important to kind of finalize this part on love, and we'll do more in the future. So many studies on the fact that emotional closeness, emotional connection, um, it does increase happiness. That's what we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about today. In the past, in particular, there were a lot of studies on marriage in a more traditional way. You don't have to be married, to be happy. But certainly, if you're in a relationship with somebody else that is well balanced and mutual respect and trust and love, those married or together people tend to say that they're very happy more than singles. And on 100-point scales, you get some extra points, as you can see here. There's a phrase I like a lot. There are few stronger predictors of happiness than a close, nurturing, equitable, so important, each word, intimate, lifelong companionship with one's best friend. Best friend, somebody well, they know you well, they know how you want to be loved and how you like to love. So
Mm-hmm.
certainly there is some benefit, if you can find it, to finding a life partner. There's no question. Again, another topic we could talk about forever.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you have children, for them, if you're in a stable relationship, um, they have, better grades, less depression. You can read the rest. They are even more interested in long-term relationships. Again, growing up with our kids, our kids grew up in Philadelphia. um, I I'm all actually for, and this is personal, for Pietro's best friends adopted from two guys, Dad and Papa, and he's great and super adjusted. Many of our friends, grew up with only their grandmother, or only a single mother, or a single father, or transsexual person, LGBT, whatever. And it's all that. The important thing is that there is, for the child, some love in their caregivers, and being together in a good relationship. It's so key. um this is your family. Kavita, do you want to share your feelings about this photos?
Hi, Vince. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, go
Hello?
ahead. I can
Oh,
hear you. You're
oh,
good.
sorry. It froze for a second. Sorry. No, thank you so much. And I wanted to just highlight to all our audience, and I love that what the word you use, Vince, that you use the word emotional closeness. It is so inclusive, because that's the whole point. Not everyone comes from the same background. Like you're saying, people sometimes are born with parents. Some people might be in foster homes. It doesn't matter. When you talk about the word family, the important thing is you get to choose your family. When you're born, sometimes you don't have a choice, but as you grow up, family are the person and the people you love are the people that you choose to be your family. It can be like, for me, I'm just sharing this beautiful picture because these are the most important people in my life, and I'm very blessed and very grateful that I have a beautiful loving family, and I have other friends that are my chosen family. But right here on the beautiful, that's our wedding picture in my home, in Bangkok, Thailand, with my parents. And beside me you can see my grandma and my mom, and then my sister, her husband, her kids, and then my two stepsons. These are the people that I love. And then on the other side, on the right, my husband, our kids, and then my mother-in-law. So it's just, find the people in your life and hold them dear, because these are the people that uplift you. That these are the people that give meaning to your life. And when you talk about love and happiness, I also just wanted to share to our audience this very exciting new book that I got hot off the press, Love Happiness by Vincenzo Vergella, which I got a signed copy from the author, very proud, that I'm going to be reading very soon. And hopefully we'll be able to share a lot of beautiful content with all of you on love as our next series in the next few months or so. But yeah, I think it's such a beautiful topic. And then, just, yeah, this is also a picture from our wedding. I just wanted to share because it was such a special day in my life, because we got married again at the Indian temple in Bangkok. And this is the same temple that my grandparents got married in. My parents were married
Wow, I didn't
there.
know that.
My sister was married there. So it's like a whole family, everyone got married. And we actually, a part of our ceremony is that you bow down and then you take laps as the vows. So to know that my grandparents, my parents, and us during our wedding, that was the exact same spot we took our vows. It was the same spot where we stood. So it's just to think about that is so powerful and so profound. It's just such a special day for me. And my husband, of course, agreed to do the full Indian wedding. I know he loved it. And just wanted to talk a little bit on love, emotional closeness. Back to a little bit about the attachment you were talking about earlier. I think, a lot of people, we hear in like love, and you say, oh, that's my better half, better half. Like, this is a concept I've actually never really fully grasped, because we're not halves. I think it's really important for people to reframe that you are a whole. If you think of yourself as a half and your partner as a half, you're constantly, I think it's easy to come and feel like that person is there to fulfill something in you. And then what ends up happening over time is the relationship becomes one of expectations rather than one of commitment. But if you both are like, no, I'm my own person, I'm a whole person, I don't, you come and add to my life, but you're not expected to fill a void in my life. It really changes how you approach the relationship. And it makes the relationship much healthier, because whatever else you add, it's like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. That's beautiful. So having the concept of two whole people. And I think and you've over time, when you live with someone long enough, you're gonna, the important keys that, like being accepting and forgiving is really important. And that's not just for marriage, I think for friendships or the people you love, because even the people you love the most are sometimes going to let you down. But if you're always able to say, I'm going to love and forgive this person and accept them for who they are, you take away the expectations you put on them. And this third one is really important for me, is your partner is your mirror. I think this is so true. When you find someone in your life, and if they do something that upsets you, before blaming them, if you are able to look at them as your mirror and say, hey, this person is holding up a mirror for me and saying, the reason I'm upset, I got to ask myself, why am I upset? What about me is making me upset, right? I'm going back to the example of the I love you text. Like if my husband doesn't text me back, I'm like, oh, well, he doesn't care anymore. Like he could be in the OR and I would be like, oh, why didn't yeah, right. But and fortunately, I have a partner who I think he's very secure in himself. He's had been through a marriage before, a divorce before, and I think he's done a lot of work on himself to get to that point. So it's really beautiful to have a partner that comes to you lovingly and say, hey, I can see you're feeling this way. Let's look into like why you think you're feeling this way. And if you can do that for yourself too, I think is important. And all relationships require effort, and consistency is a love language that people don't talk about enough. I think it's so important. You don't just do it in the honeymoon phase. A successful relationship is one that you say, I'm going to show up every day and put in effort every day and be my best version for my partner every single day. It's a choice, right? So I think, and
Absolutely. And in the future, you show the book, I'll go over the many keys to a successful, relationship.
yeah. And I've shared this before. I just love this, just again, a little coaching tool in case anyone wants, just while we're talking about relationships, whether it's with your friend, your best friend, your partner, if there's someone that's really important in your life that you're like living with and you feel like you want to make sure you both are constantly on the same page, check in with each other. Some people forget to do this. These are my 5 favorite questions I do with my husband every Sunday night at 9 p.m. We have our schedule, we go over, and it's a safe space for us to share things that we feel. So I'm not going to read the questions, but you have it on the slide. So just something for you to refer back to.
Well, I'm going to read them because they're so important.
Okay,
And,
go
and
ahead.
and and again, I think that people should schedule some of this stuff. Should
Yes.
schedule time together with their partner. Mike Foley, I think we mentioned it before. One of my mentor, leadership guru, says he spends an hour and a half every day, walking with his wife, after work in the evening, and talking about what's the highlight of your week or your day. What are some challenges? What are your goals? What are you doing for yourself? How can I be there for you? How do you want me to help you? And what can I do differently? How can I continue to improve? So important. And you can choose your own questions. I love
Yeah.
these ones that you and Tori chose. But it's really, really important to have some routine. The same way you're supposed to show up at work at 9 or 8 or
Hmm.
7 or whatever. You also need to schedule some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
I'll go over some of the other things. We talked about love, but there's lots of other stuff. My mom always says, health first. This is, I did a lot of swimming when I was young. I played a lot of tennis. This is me playing soccer. And it's interesting that the data says it's self-reported health, because sometimes, people think, we may have some kind of disease, but it depends on how we face that issue. So self-reported health, how you feel about your health status, is more important than just what your doctor it's
Mhm.
saying, because again, it includes stress, isolation, depression. Obviously, things like chronic pain, depression, and cancer are what we fear the most, and they may be harder to face. But even becoming quadriplegic, as you can see in this slide, can be overcome, and you can regain the former level of
Mhm.
happiness. Many studies say is within a year, and it
Mhm.
all reflects about keeping exercising, sleeping. Actually, I think I said this before. For my big birthday last month, my wife gave me not only bought me a leg racing machine, but an app in which I can actually interact once a week with a little coach. It's actually very cheap, And Wednesday, for example, I met with this coach, half an hour, worked out, and you feel so much better. My endorphins go to the roof, and exercising, it's so important and so undervalued.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when you shared, the leadership conference that we were talking about, like what is your one great thing for the morning we go around. And I still remember you said, you had the chance to work out 3 mornings in a row, and I could see
Yeah,
just how happy you were just saying that. It's so true. Yeah.
yeah, and again, yeah, I used to swim a lot, and when I swim, after it, I'm probably obnoxious because I'm so happy, so relaxed, so pumped about life. I usually
Yeah.
am, genetically,
Yeah.
but exercise gets me to a different level, and it does that
Absolutely.
to everyone.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that, again, we'll spend one slide, but we could talk for days, um, is some spirituality.
Hmm.
Um, there's so much data on this, as you can see on the slide. You do gain points on the
Hmm.
happiness scale, and
Mm.
for example, you could go to temple or a synagogue or church or whatever. Actually, admit I do like to go on Sunday, and I think what I get is you meditate while you're there. Even my young kids, you're singing, you're interacting with people, so it's very social.
Hmm.
It's a 20-minute thing, and then for half an hour you interact with your friends who also go. um, it brings altruism, helping others, volunteering for things, donating, giving. So I don't think it's really religion, which
Yeah.
unfortunately has caused many, many huge problems in the world, but some kind of spirituality. There's excellent randomized studies on praying. Praying is associated with a higher level of well-being and happiness. Um, and it's because, again, of meditation, altruism, social relationships that are related to spirituality. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah.
This is evidence-based. It's not that you can deny this.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I agree. I'm not like going to religion because I feel everyone has a very different approach to, what they would love and respect. But ultimately, why is this such a big part of everything? Is because, religion or spirituality, whatever you choose to call it, grounds you. And all of us, at the end of the day, we need something that grounds us and something that makes us feel like we are a part of something bigger. Because that is really the whole point of all of this, right? It's not about like learning a religion to tell someone else that this is better. And unfortunately, that's kind of what's happened. But really, the reason that makes people so happy is because you suddenly feel a part of something bigger. You feel grounded. You connect with a deeper version of yourself. And especially in today's world when we are so occupied and distracted by things around us, having a space or a time or a routine in your life where you are involved, either, religion, spirituality, whatever works for you, but making some time for those things is important. It really does help you show up and bring out the light within yourself. And, even in temples and stuff, like you're saying, and people go, that's a space sometimes where everyone's showing up grounded, and that's why the interactions there are so much more beautiful because everyone is just there to love and to be happy. So I
I'm
agree.
thinking my time in India, looking at you, and going to these temples, pools and warm water and all these amazing sounds. You
Hmm.
almost feel like you're in a different world. You're outside Earth and way past
Yeah.
the clouds and the sky. And yeah, it just a moment to also kind of find out again, like we have discussed all along, who you are, what matters most to you. It's so important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I love that you bring that up because I think that's the beauty, to not be tied up in saying that this is the only place I'm going to explore spirituality, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about the good energy that people bring to those places. Those spaces just have this, it's almost like it's not humanly. You walk in and you can just feel like there's an
Yeah,
energy larger than you. So go explore it, be parts of different, go try different temples, different, like just to connect with the beautiful energy that this world has to offer you in these spaces. It's free to everyone. It doesn't have to be this is my only space. So I like that you shared that,
And
exploring.
I've been lucky enough. I've been to 6 continents. So I've been in mosques in which I was moved. I
Yeah.
don't know if I told you this, and it's a little personal, but I remember we were in front of the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. With my 2 kids. Again, we're Christian Catholic, and I'm praying and I'm saying, peace in the world and this and that. And then I told Andrea, he must have been 8 or 9, my first son, why don't you say something? He was sobbing. He
Hmm.
was sobbing. And
Yeah.
this is, was not, is a religious place. But again, these places are so powerful that at 8 or 10, I forgot how old he was, year old, felt it, felt, I
Yeah.
guess, my words, felt the spirituality of the place, and it moves you. It really causes amazing emotions.
Absolutely. It's just a time when you connect with something larger than yourself. And I think, and the whole point of this is, find your anger, find what lifts you up. What is that space for you? Because sometimes when your life is so crazy, you just need a little escape. And that's why meditation, I think, is so
Right.
powerful, because that is when you're just like, you're escaping from the world into that, connecting with a part of you that's bigger than yourself. And find books that help you as well. Like for me recently, I read a lot on, philosophy, spirituality. I enjoy these things because it helps me really ground myself. And this is kind of one of my favorite books right now. Have you ever read The Power of Now, Dr.
Yeah, wonderful book. I highly
Wonderful.
recommend it.
Yeah, and I think it gives you such a different perspective on life. There's so many different books out there. So, just exploring this, even a little bit, one chapter here, one chapter there, it might change your worldview and change how you carry yourself through the world, how you walk, how you talk, the energy you emit. You become more conscious of your own energy and how you show up in every space as well. Yeah.
And there are many videos, many TED talks on all this
Yes.
concept, on this book, and it goes back, like you have this slide, on the biopsychosocial approach to happiness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I bring this slide up a lot because I feel like every day in our day to day, it's you kind of like, well, what do I do? Just at least if you can do something bio, like the health that you said, work out or eat well, think good thoughts, interact with good people, just do one act of that fits each of these categories on a daily basis. It will boost your happiness significantly. And while we're on this slide, I actually might want to pause and help guide everyone to this. I just came across, I was listening to this podcast 2 days ago by Mel Robbins. I don't know if any one of you, I'm sure everybody know, a lot of people know who Mel Robbins is, and she does a lot of the happiness and stuff too. And one of her recent podcasts, she talks about this visualization of exercise for happiness, which I absolutely loved. So I just want to share with everyone and everyone to invite everyone to join me. So, we talk about, well, Vince, you and I are sitting here talking about happiness, and some people might be thinking, I'm not in a place in my life where I'm happy, and you guys can talk all you want, but my day is like this, and there's no way I'm going to feel happy today. Recognize one thing: you exist in lots of different worlds. This is your world today. But the fact that you're not happy today, maybe, is because you were happy at one point. You know what happiness feels like, right? So, and that happiness might have existed in your childhood, in the past, or certain activity you did. So, let's just grab a piece of paper if you have one in front of you. If you don't, that's fine. You can use your think about it too.
I have
It's
it.
Oh, great. So it's gonna be, I'm gonna guide you through this, I think traveling between portals between two worlds. You're on one side of the paper, you're gonna write happy me. Okay. And you're gonna draw a line down the middle. Okay. And then on the other side of the paper, you're gonna write me today. Okay. And then I want to invite everyone to just close your eyes. If you're like, I don't know, I used to be happier, just close your eyes and transport yourself to the place or a memory where you were really happy. It could be all the way in your childhood. It could be when you were in a previous job. It could be, when you were yesterday. It could have been wherever. What were you doing at that time? How did you spend your time? What was your day like during that day? Were you maybe walking to work? You were cooking, or you loved cooking breakfast? You were sitting and eating with the people you love? What was your favorite part of that day? and just really hold on to that and really feel that happiness, just feel that joy bursting in you. Remember how happy you were doing that act. What is it that you were doing then that you might not have in your today, you're not doing anymore today? You forgot, you left it along the way. And as before you open your eyes, I want you to just carry that with you and imagine bringing it through this portal into this dimension of which you are actually existing right now. And then open your eyes and slowly open your eyes. And on the slide that you wrote, the happy me, what was it? What came up for you, Vince? What came up? I'm just so curious.
Oh, playing with my daughter.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. She's 6 months old. She's beautiful. When we're born, I don't know. I have 4 kids, but everyone is special, and I guess we're all born smiling in some ways. She certainly has the genetic of smiling all the time. She's very positive, and just to see that beauty, that and the effect you can have. You smile at her, and she
uh-huh.
smiles back. If you don't smile, she actually doesn't smile.
Oh.
And so the effect, and then the more she smiles, the more I smile.
Love it.
And it begins to be a wonderful virtuous cycle. Yeah, that what came up, and I actually left this world for a few minutes there.
Yeah, you see, and I think that's the thing. You can always transport yourself back into that place that's happening. And if you think about an activity that you were like, I used to love walking and I don't have time to do that anymore. Bring that activity, think that activity that you remember being so happy doing, just bring that back into today's world. You can do that. Like whatever memory came up for you. Like for me, I think I got transport when I first heard this exercise. I remember I got transported back to my childhood, sitting and eating dinner with my family. It's our tradition, right? Like we every evening we always sat down and ate dinner together at the dinner table every evening without fail, and we all share our day, share our stories. As I moved here to America, residency fellowship, you're living by yourself, you don't have time to do all that. And now being married to my husband's also a physician, or even his schedule is always busy, we're not always at home at the same time. The teenage boys there, they have their activities, spend time with friends, with girlfriends and stuff too. So I'm like, how do I bring that? Was such an important part of my happiness. So I was like, I need to bring that back because it brings me so much joy. So sometimes you might not be able to recreate the exact same thing, but you make space for it. So we say, okay, now every Sunday evening, it's family dinner. Just even if we can do it one day a week. And that just made me so happy. So when we're able to do it any Sunday, it's just like the highlight of my week, because that is a memory, especially if it's your childhood memory of something that used to make you really happy. Bring it back, recreate it, be creative, and continue to share that happiness and memory with the people you love now that are in your life today. Yeah.
Yeah, and brings back the issue of flow and really being happy. Another concept I wanted to touch on, again, there's so many activities and things that are associated with happiness. I actually didn't know this till I guess 10, 15 years ago. um, there is some data that actually the nation you live in um, is associated with government, and there is some data that if you live in a place where there is personal freedom, when there is a democracy, where things work, you go to the post office or get the passport, there's the rule of law, you're not worried about violence or bombs or criminals, you're safe in your house, you can trust the police, um, minorities, etc., handicapped people, people are respected. Believe it or not, I know some people may not be for it or whatever, but there is some good level one data that
Mhm.
universal health care, everybody gets free health care. Many nations in the Western world have that, and even in outside of the high income countries, that's associated with more personal happiness. If you have childcare, so you can go to work and your child is taken care of. Paid paternal leave. There's some good evidence that 6 months or more is associated with more happiness than less. That education, it's free, public, affordable, and there is some kind of meritocratic system. That's why I moved to this country,
Mm.
because I felt it was a lot more meritocratic than, for example, my original country of Italy was. And I came from a universal healthcare system in Italy. It's not the best in the world, but France, many other countries, UK have it, and it works really well. And interesting, if you look at all this list, if you then look at the happiness scales, because actually the WHO and the UN, they do surveys every year, and I followed it every year. And basically, here the countries with the lighter yellow are the happiest countries. Like
Mm.
the top 10 are in the faintest, lightest yellow. And on the other hand, the darkest red are unfortunately at the bottom. The bottom 120, 140
Yeah.
countries that are sampled. And not every country, unfortunately, even gets it's organized enough to get sampled. But the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Finland,
Mhm.
even Switzerland, and Austria, they, Iceland, it may feel like it's cold there, uh, and it is cold. They every year for I've been following this for 20 years. Every year they come in the top five,
Yeah.
six. They're always there. The US and Canada usually are within the first 10, 12. That's why they're the light yellow. You can see my native Italy, it's usually 25, 27th. I guess where's Thailand? Thailand is
Plants orange colored all the way down there.
orange, so it's probably more 50, 80.
Yeah.
And India is pretty dark.
Yep.
Um,
Industry. Yeah.
Afghanistan, as you could see, often, Afghanistan, for our audience, they have the highest incidence often, like other African countries, of
Mm.
maternal mortality, neonatal mortality, perinatal mortality. And again, it goes back to safety,
Yeah.
to government, to healthcare, to
Absolutely.
education. Some of these countries, take the Scandinavian countries, have free healthcare.
Mhm.
Lots of paternity, maternity leave, safety. There are no
Yep.
wars there. People believe in their government more
Mhm.
places. So
Absolutely.
I love actually some of this data. Again, we talked about genetics, we talked about nurture, we talk about parents, we talk about peers, but there's also something to say about where you're from. And
Absolutely. I think this reminds me of I think a slide you had shared in one of the early episodes of the triangle that you show with like the different things. And, I think the one of the
yeah,
basic you
yeah,
put there was like the basic necessities, food, water, shelter, and that's again, like, these are things we can't take for granted because this is clear. They're like countries around the world with people who don't have it, but it's so, so critical. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Somewhere related to this is also money. I think I showed a slide earlier on in
Yeah.
our first or second thing, but I love some of the studies. Again, not opinion, but studies. Science data. It's interesting that when you're young, if you kind of plan on doing what you like to do and plan on being happy yourself for what your strengths are, students identified as happy as freshmen in college, and some of these are Harvard students, etc., actually ended up making more money. Um, while if those same college freshmen had as a goal to be wealthy, so not being happy and realizing what they were born for, but I just want to make money, they actually ended up being less satisfied with life, being anxious, anger, mental disorders compared to controls.
Yeah.
So powerful. These are studies done over 20, 30, 40 years.
Mhm.
You can see the references there, science and, major publications, major studies. So set yourself since young to not want to make money, but to realize who you are and what your strengths are. We talked about it a lot, you and I, in the previous sessions. I always say I'm fearful for my second son, who's in finance and works at J.P. Morgan, but I do know, hopefully, that uh, his goal is bigger than that, and hopefully that money will be for good causes, for
Mhm.
helping the poor and the needy, and
Absolutely.
and not just to accumulate wealth, which eventually does not make you make you happy.
Mhm.
These are some quick things. We've talked about geography, so the country you live with can make a difference, but
Mhm.
climate, not really. A lot of people say, I'm going to move to Florida, here in the U.S., or to San Diego or something, and the weather's beautiful all day long. Um, Actually, that's not so much associated with happiness. This is some of the things that surprised me. Um, I come from a beach town in Italy, where for 4 or 5 months a year it's really pleasant, and you can go to the beach every day. And the culture I grew up with was like, oh, you can just lay on the beach all day long, do nothing, and tan. But that's not happiness. Actually, there's I found a lot of data that if you go to the beach and hang out with friends, exercise, swim, read a good book, meditate, yes, that's happiness. But just because the weather is nice, that itself may give you a quick sparkle, but it goes away if you're not socially happy, if you're not, again, playing to your strengths and all that stuff we talked about. The same way that, again, shopping, a lot of people say, I'm going to buy a Ferrari. The moment you buy the Ferrari, 2 days later, that happiness goes away. The moment you buy a mansion that you dreamed all your life, that doesn't really um, turn out to be associated with long-term happiness. The same way that watching TV is not associated with long-term happiness, especially if you watch more than a couple hours a day. Another amazing, scientific body of literature is the models, like, people that model, guys and girls. There are some of the most unhappy people
Mhm.
because they are, quote unquote, liked and respected because of their looks, which change and are temporary. Um, there is good data to say the gender doesn't matter if you're gay or trans or straight or whatever, and even age.
Mhm.
I was so pleasant surprised because I am getting, less young with time,
I love how you phrase it. Yeah,
less young.
love it.
That actually the curve goes like this. That up to 75 or more, and I have quite a few years to go, 75 or more. You Happiness can go up if you follow the principles we talked about, and as long as you're healthy, going back to some of the concepts we talked about, as long as you're healthy, you don't have too much pain, and you can do your daily activity and exercise. Grandkids and more social relationships, more time to spend with friends and the people you care, that actually brings more happiness. So a lot of myths I had in my life in my first few decades, that are not true.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel, how you will comment on some of this
No,
content.
I love these. And especially when you talked about climate, the first thing that came to mind was actually Mayo Clinic. So, I trained
Right.
at Mayo Clinic. I lived in Rochester, Minnesota for 3 years, right? And if you've ever been to Rochester, it
Oof.
is it's one
Oof.
very, very small city, and all that there is there is the Mayo Clinic. And people travel from all over the world to be there. And
Yeah.
in the winter lasts for about 8 months. And for at least, oh yes, it starts snowing in September all the way to April or May. And then in January and February, the temperatures drop down to -30 and -40 Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius. It's absurd. It's inhumane. You walk out and people love doing this. They'll come out in the winter, just splash a cup of hot water in the air and it freezes midair because it's that cold, you know? But and so the climate is just so crazy. And still it happens to be the number one hospital in the world year after year after year. And the doctors that show up that work there, the people that work there, they are so happy. And do you know why? It's not the climate. They all have a sense of purpose. They're there because they have a purpose, and that is what is keeping them happy. And they choose to stay there. There's some doctors that come train for residency fellowship and never leave. They're there forever. It's because
Oh, you froze a little bit. Hopefully it's going to come back. But following on,
yeah.
you froze a moment. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, you're
I
on.
think we
You're on.
froze a little again here
You're
for a
good.
second. Hopefully we'll be back. Oh, sorry.
No, no, you're good. No, and you probably can hear me now. The I am so happy about the fact that, again, it's the social relationship. So, for example, if you're deciding where to move, probably don't think, sun and beach first.
Mhm.
Think social relationships. Where is my family, my best
Mhm.
friends? Where can I have a job that is meritocratic, where I can achieve my goals? Not that job is everything, but again, where is my partner and or partners or whatever, um, going to be happy? Not necessarily that the weather is 80 degrees every day.
Exactly, exactly. I completely agree with that.
So going into things that can make you happy, and we'll finish in the next 5 minutes or so. Um, One thing, I put a map of Philadelphia here. If you live close to work, that is associated with
Mhm.
happiness, because a long commute, especially with traffic, that's actually a very, very well studied thing that is associated with unhappiness. If you, it's not only that it's an hour plus, but you're in traffic, you're stressed. I bike, as I say all the time,
Yeah,
7 minutes to work, back and forth. I did that as well today. Um, so important.
yeah.
Um, I put laundry, high cost of divorce. I think house chores can be often, again, proven by many studies on relationships. Um, if, one does more laundry or more dishwashing or more cooking, that can be a major cause of unhappiness at home. And so you have to solve that. You either change and do the laundry and help, you can get help. Many of you listening can afford it. Um, Childcare, same thing. You can get grinding, that kids are getting
Mhm.
up at night. And in fact, the last 24 hours, my wife is on call the whole 24 hours. I'm with the kids. I do have some help, but it's important. I'm happy about that, and I join it. And I don't, point to each other. I did more, or you did more, or this is
Mhm.
not fair. And like you said, schedule some time, with your significant other, away from work, away from laundry, away from childcare, so that you can bond.
Yeah.
And any
Yeah.
thoughts about this?
No, absolutely. I love
Wisdom?
the long commute part because I want to share a little first. Because sometimes you might find yourself in situations where you're just stuck. You already have a house. You're far away from work. What are you going to do? You're not going to move just because of the slide we put up here, right? But because I had this personal thing, because like again, when I lived in Rochester, at Mayo Clinic, my apartment was walking distance. It was like a 5 minute walk from my apartment to the hospital. It was beautiful. Of course, like during winter, I still drove because I think it's inhumane to put myself out there in minus 30
And
degrees.
you're
I
from
would,
Bangkok, this is
yeah, so I
very
would do
different.
a 2 minute drive from my apartment to the hospital parking garage. And then I moved here to DC, Maryland, right? And where we live and where I work, as I work, I'm serving an underserved population, so it's kind of a little bit out a little bit. So it's like an hour and 15 minute drive from home.
Oh,
And
wow.
if you've ever been to Washington D.C.,
A
you
lot of
will
traffic.
find all interesting drivers, that people who've probably never driven before and come from all over the world to drive, and the traffic is so crazy. And in the first month, I was like, oh my God, I went from like just walking to work and had all this free time. Now I'm stuck in the car for these almost 3 hours a day, you know? And that is, you're right, a big cause of unhappiness. But remember, when you find yourself in an unhappy place, you have a choice. You can complain about it, or you can do something to change it into a happy event. So that actually, I ended up using that time now to listen to audiobooks on philosophy, on
Beautiful.
happiness. So that's how I converted something so negative into, now I look forward to that time. I look forward to, in the morning, I'm going to have my 1 hour of listening to something, a new topic about something, learn something new, and talk to my family, call my mom, and talk to her on my way home. Whatever book I've been wanting to listen or read, I get it done during that hour. So you have the power to change every unhappy event into a happy one. You just got to be creative, think of things you can do that will bring joy, add joy to that moment.
I think we'll close since the top of the hour on that beautiful message. You can change, when you realize that something is not working, you can change it for the better. That's such a wonderful message. We have a few more points to go through in terms of activities that affect happiness. I love it that we're doing this Fridays. I think this Happy Fridays. Now we're done
Yes.
with six, and so the seventh, and I think it will be the last one.
Yeah.
Will be March 22nd at 8 a.m. Eastern. We look forward to spending some time with you all there, and I certainly look forward to spending some time with you, Kavita, and going over such important
Oh,
issues.
likewise, Vince. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all our audience for joining in today. Go enjoy the day. Go bloom. Be this, be your own version of your spring and have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.